welcome to the next section. So here's the truth. You don't need to you need to understand the machine learning. You need to know at least the basics of the technology. And here's why. It is because machine learning is becoming so important, and machine learning is bigger and bigger part of our world every single day. And in this course, I will introduce you the basics of the machine learning. To do that, we will walk through a few modules. We'll start by answering the big question, what is machine learning? Then we'll look at the machine learning process. Then we will end with a closer look at machine learning. When you are done, you will understand enough about machine learning to go on. So what is machine learning? Let's begin at the beginning. What is machine learning? There's probably no definition that the whole world would agree on, but there are certainly some core concepts. To think about this, think about what machine learning does. The core thing that machine learning does is find patterns in data. If it then uses those patterns to predict the future. Some examples you could use machine learning is to detect credit card fraud. Suppose you have data about like you can find the patterns in the data. You could use machine learning to detect credit card fraud. Suppose previous credit card transaction, you can find patterns in the data potentially. This that will let you to detect when a new card transaction is likely to be fraudulent, or maybe you want to determine when a customer is likely to switch to a new competitor. Again, you could possibly find patterns in the existing customer data that will help you to do that. Or maybe you want to decide when it's time to do preventive maintenance on a fatty robot. Once again, you can look at the existing data. You could find patterns that predict when a robot is going to fail. There are lots more, but the core idea is machine learning lets you find patterns in data, and then use those patterns to predict the future. So you can get the patterns of the data and use those patterns to predict the future. So next thing we will see is finding patterns, how we can able to find the pattern in the data. So let's take a step back, and what does it mean to learn. So we'll try to see what does it mean to learn. For example, how did you learn to read? Well, learning requires identifying patterns. In reading, for instance, you identify letters and then patterns of letters together to form words, and then you then had to recognize those patterns when you saw them again. That's what learning means. Just as when you learn to read, and that's what machine learning does with data that we provide. So in this presentation, I will show, for example, suppose I have data about credit card transaction. Suppose I have only 4 records. Each one has 3 fields: the customer name, the amount of the transaction, and whether it was fraudulent or not. What's the pattern that this data suggests for fraudulent transactions? You can see that we have the name field, amount field, and fraudulent field. So what's the pattern that is fraudulent? So for this the name starts with pre, they are criminal. So you can see if the name starts with pre, the fraudulent transaction is happening. Well, it's obvious it isn't. If the name starts with pre, they are criminal. Well, probably not. The problem with having so little data is it's easy to find patterns, but it's hard to find the patterns that are correct in the sense they are predictive. They help us understand whether a new transaction is likely to be fraudulent or not. So we'll see some more data. So we'll see another example. So suppose I have more data. Now I have more records. Now I have more fields in each one. Now that I know where the card was issued, where it was used, the age of the user. Now what's the pattern for fraudulent transactions? Well, it turns out that if you look at, there's really a pattern in this data. It is that a transaction is fraudulent if the card holder age is in the 20s, and if the card is issued in USA, and if it was used in Russia, and the amount is more than $1,000. You could have found that pattern, I bet, if you looked at this data for a little while. But once again, do we know that this pattern is truly predictive? Probably not. We don't have enough data to do this well. We don't have enough data, and people just can't find patterns. You have to use some kind of software. That's what machine learning comes in. So we'll see what the machine learning in a nutshell, how we can able to do it in a process. So you start out first. You start with data. that contain patterns, and then you feed the data onto a machine learning algorithm. It would be more than one that find patterns in the data. This algorithm generates something called model. A model is functionality, typically code that would able to recognize patterns when presented with new data. Applications then use that model by supplying new data to see if this data matches known patterns, such as supplying data about a new transaction. The model can return a probability of whether this transaction is fraudulent or not. It knows because of the patterns because of the patterns that it's going to recognize. So this is what the machine learning in a nutshell. We'll see more things in the next upcoming slides. We'll see how we can able to recognize the patterns and what are the different machine learning vendors and how we can able to utilize the machine learning algorithms in this course. So doing machine learning requires uh, requires lots of data. So why is machine learning so hot right now? So, well, there are several reasons. A big one is doing machine learning requires lots of data, which is more and more we have. Well, we live in the big data era. Right now, it requires a lot of compute era. That's why we have now have the big data technologies such as Hadoop framework and Apache Spark, and there are a lot of big data technologies and a lot of big data distribution frameworks. And it requires a lot of compute power, which more and more we have. We live in the cloud era, and it requires effective machine learning algorithms, which more and more we have, because we have seen researchers spend years, decades in this space, learning what works. All of these things are more available than ever, and that's a big reason why machine learning is hot today. So who is interested in machine learning? Well, you could think that there are about three groups of people who care about this topic. One is business leaders. They want solutions to their business problems. The first thing I have described so far is fraudulent transactions. So you can see whether the customers are going to switch or not. All these things, these are good business problems. So good solutions have good real business value. Organizations do things faster, better, and cheaper, and so business leaders really want those solutions. This is a good thing, because business leaders also have the money to pay for the solutions. A very important. And software developers also care about this, because they want to build better applications. As we saw, applications can rely on models via machine learning to make better predictions. If you're a software developer, machine learning can help you to build smarter apps. Even if you're not the one who creates models, you can just use the models. And the third category of the people is who are really involved in the space is called data scientists, who are powerful, who want powerful, easy to use, obvious question here. So what's a data scientist? The answer generally is it's someone who knows about three things. They know about statistics, they know about machine learning software, they know how to write code typically, and ideally a problem domain such as credit card transaction fraud or robot preventive maintenance or some other area. There are key things to know about data scientists. First, good ones are scarce, and second, good ones are expensive. And the reason is, if you can solve important business problems with machine learning, you can save a lot of money. There is a real good business value, and so good data scientists who know all of these three things: statistics, machine learning, and a problem domain, can have an enormous value. That's why right now they command substantial salaries and often hard to keep in your employ. It's worth taking a little bit at about some of the vendors involved in this space. So here are some example machine learning offering products and services. It's useful to view these vendors in a few categories. One is analytical vendors, SAS, top business analytical vendor, that's mainly used in formatical and also in the general analytical applications, and RapidMiner Studio and others. These are the people who you'd expect to be in this market, because machine learning is also referred to sometimes as predictive analytics. It is very much an extension of the classical analytics of data mining in many ways, but you also today see the mega vendors. Mega vendors are nothing but IBM SPSS Studio and SAP Predictive Analysis, Oracle Advanced Analytics, and they are now we have, because they think there's a big money here, they think it's an important and growing market. What, they are right. You could also see some of the cloud vendors, Microsoft Azure Learning and Amazon Machine Learning. And When we go back to see what's the real reason behind machine learning algorithms and all these things is, there's another machine learning technology that's worth mentioning here. It is called an OR. So OR is an open source programming and language and environment. It's not just a language. It supports machine learning. It supports various kinds of computing about statistics and more. It has a lot of available packages to address machine learning problems and all sort of other things. All really popular. Many commercial machine learning offering supports are, including many of those I just talked about it. So many of the vendors like Microsoft Azure, Amazon, and they all support R. In fact, R has been around for a little long time. It has been roots that it has been there from 90s. But it's not only it's only not only a choice in the area, and Python is also increasing popular, and it's an open source technology of doing machine learning algorithms. There are now a number of libraries and packages for Python as well. So R is no longer alone as an open source choice in this area, but still fair to say it's the most popular choice. Coming back, so what you have discussed and the main points regarding this discussion. The machine learning lets us to find patterns in the existing data, then creates and use a model that recognizes those patterns in new data. Machine learning has absolutely gone mainstream, as you can tell by all the big vendors who think there's a big money in the market. And finally, it's probably clear, but it's really important point to make. It is that machine learning can probably help your organization. So this is what the main thing about the machine learning and its techniques and its main vendors and why it's being used and what's the background programming languages that you really need to understand. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.